Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. Hope you enjoy. It's all just a game, written by Eclipse Shadow. To Queen Zevra and the Rivali High Council, it's all just a game to them. War, fighting, business, everything is a game to humans. Humanity makes a game out of everything and anything. Given that we frequently had quite a bit of time off between missions, I decided to learn more about human culture. So I asked Chris, my son, to introduce me to human games. He started me off with a rather simple one, a game about falling shapes. It was rather calming, slowly building up a tower, then destroying the bottom layers with well-placed pieces. This lulled me into a false state of security as the game sped up the tension of the building with every missed piece until I couldn't keep up and lost. He seems to be happy about my loss, explaining that I already beat the highest score 30 minutes ago. 30 minutes, I thought, only to realize almost 2 hours had passed. The next genre I tackled would be grand strategy. For the first game, I was taking control of a feudal lord during a time when many humans engaged in multiple holy wars. I slowly grew my forces on the small island nation I started at, fending off invading raiders until I had united the kingdom. Around this time, my character died of leprosy, or old age. Either way, I ended up playing as my brave son with one eye. He soon died 2 months later from poison. This left me with his son, a diligent duelist with a fever. Thankfully, he got over that just in time for the crusade to be called, where he died in battle. From what I learned from this game, humans back in the same time had substantially shorter lifespans. They died a whole lot quicker due to the lack of medicine and proper hygiene, and other genetic defects. The second genre I tried was real-time strategy. In this game, I played as a leader of a military where I would command my forces and conquer the battlefield. This seemed right up my alley, building up my base, developing a stronger army, and pushing into the enemy base slowly but surely. I would sneak a few engineers into the enemy base to go and steal some of their buildings, allowing me to make some of their units. The thrill of optimizing my defenses and managing multiple fronts and building FOBs mid-fight was intense. I could feel that rush of the Sentinel Gnosis at the time seemed to move slowly when it happened. Several attacks happening, my engineer sneaking into the enemy command center, my navy bombarding their allies' incoming forces, all the while my super weapon fired at the reinforcing enemy base, destroying his war factory. Oh, the joy I felt destroying their forces so easily. Taking a step away from the strategy genre, I moved on to shooter games. There seemed to be so many of them, so I guess this would be military shooter games. Either way, for this game I played a soldier on a battlefield. I opted to play a medic since it was what I am most familiar with. Immediately thrusted into the game, I was moving throughout the city, avoiding tanks and the occasional low-flying jet, reviving my allies and killing the enemy with my rifle. As I was capturing a point with my squad, someone was putting C4 on a vehicle, only to then crash said vehicle into the incoming tank and blow both up, along with himself. According to my son, this is normal for the game, and he seemed surprised nobody had launched a vehicle across the map with explosives yet. Apparently, friendly fire is normally disabled for the mode that I was playing, on allowing a glitch to happen wherein players could send their teammates flying across the battleground by setting off explosives beneath the vehicle. The next up was a more melee-oriented game. When looking up strategies for this game, most of what I could find was a reoccurring phrase of "get good." Well, the monsters found in this game were rather difficult to fight, but I soon found my groove, as the humans would call it. I felt the rush of Synagnosis as I faced some of the tougher enemies, the thrill of fighting mighty adversaries pushing me to fight harder. It was exhilarating. Before I knew it, I had already beaten the game 3 times in a row. Time seemed to slip by me, as I'd forgotten when I began playing. I decided to try out a horror game. against my better judgment. This one in particular struck my interest, as you could play as a monster or the survivors. My time as the monster reminded me of the days spent back home hunting prey. But as a survivor, the game became a tense chase, hiding where I could, using the environment to try and hinder my pursuing foe. I'll admit that it was terrifying, despite there being no threat to my life. The fear of something like that chasing me was rather haunting. Soon enough, I found myself playing a role-playing game, this one in particular being about a child who was gifted with an elemental animal as a pet and then thrust into a world to go catch more elemental animals and have them fight. It seemed odd at first, so while playing I began doing a bit of casual research on the series, only to learn about just how intricate the underlying systems are. Inherited values, a genetic stat that determined how strong your creatures will be in certain areas, effort values based on what you fight, natures that boost one stat at the cost of another. They even had a system of crossbreeding creatures to give some unique moves that they may not have, and don't even get me started on the hidden abilities some may have. Shortly after beating the game and doing a bit of experimentation, I managed to build the perfect team with the aforementioned systems, and tried to out-competitive side of things. It seemed easier than expected with the random battles I entered, only for my son to interject, explaining that the weaker teams I faced were probably children. Perhaps I took things a bit far. I tried sports games, management games, and other genres, but nothing too out of the ordinary. They just seemed to show various aspects of human culture and do a rather good job at that. Racing games, on the other hand, seemed to be rather odd, as there was some where you could race others or see just how much damage and destruction to multiple vehicles was possible. Beyond that, nothing much stood out. I would later try out some virtual reality games, starting with one where you wielded various bladed melee weapons along with magic. It was rather interesting seeing the AI try and counter me, but they were rather predictable. In short, it seemed like an early prototype of a military combat and training simulations, but from what I'd heard, this game that any human could just pick up and play. So to end it off, at the request of my son, I decided to try one more grand strategy game. What I found is horrifying. The humans have made an eerie recreation of the current war as a scenario campaign in this game. While some of the names aren't correct, key events that have already occurred and some we planned out but not yet executed exist within the game. But this DLC came out long before any of these events happened, and none of the development team are military, ex-military, or have any major contacts there. The stealth mission to eliminate a key enemy commander while publicly showing it, for example. From playing through this campaign, I can see that as things are, humanity can easily win the war against the Targaryen Empire, with or without us. Then there's the base game itself. You can create your own spacefaring civilization and explore the galaxy, fighting various dangers, from rogue AI drones to sentient meteors, sending out science ships to go explore and discover the universe, building up your technology with research, then having to fight wars because wars over borders or resources, or because of local marauders wanting more of your resources. Either way, there are so many ways to develop nations that it is mind-boggling just how advanced the simulation of running a spacefaring nation is, despite how old the game is. Not to mention the fact that this is a game, something humans play for fun. Dear sister, I implore you and the council to do one thing. Keep the humans as our friends at all costs. To them, war is nothing more than a game their children can easily win. They are a species that has lived through 2 wars where their entire world was once fighting itself. Wars that later had games made of them. I do not fear that they'll suddenly turn on us, for they seem to have a fierce sense of loyalty to their friends. And given how we were the first to welcome them to the galactic stage with open arms, they know us and love us. To them, we are their dear friends, and in some cases, their family. In all honesty, I believe that we should introduce our people to more of the human games, let our young learn to think just as strategically as the humans do, learn their culture inside and out. We should also introduce the humans to our own video games. While ours may be primitive by comparison, the humans seem to enjoy such things, calling them niche or cult classics. No one referring to an actual cult. Regardless, I believe this cultural exchange will help further our partnership and understanding of one another. Sincerely, your younger sister, Natalia Shepherd. End of story. I would just quickly like to thank the T5 channel members and patrons, Caspar Arnholtz, Cam Maxwell, Barkey, It's Difficult to Pronounce, Lord Azrakul, and Arcadian.